Greetings of peace and love. Thank you all for being with us today. I'm Reverend Cardona. I'm here with Reverend Lisa Benton. We are Miracles with a Twist Conversations. We are here to dig deep and unpack issues related to discussions that have taken place based on A Course in Miracles. We follow up on the Miracles with a Twist live stream, which takes place every Thursday at 7 p.m. live on Facebook. It's also archived on a YouTube channel, which is RevLo Cardona. Then Miracles with a Twist Conversations follows that, usually on Tuesdays, and we discuss what we learned, heard, felt about the live stream content. And that is archived also on Facebook and on YouTube, but that is MWATC Conversations. That's how you find it. Miracles with a Twist Conversations. So look for us everywhere and anywhere. And if you have questions, we'll be glad to answer them. We're here to address whatever it is that comes up from an interfaith perspective. So let's begin with a prayer together. And we start by taking a nice, deep, unified breath. Breathe in. And as we breathe out, we put our hands to our heart. Feel your heartbeat. We take a moment to feel our heartbeat so that we stay engaged with each other, because we are of one mind and one heartbeat. We are one brotherhood, sisterhood, kindred spirits, mighty companions, brothers and sisters on this path, on this very sacred path of awakening, of finding our way every day to do better and to be better, to correct our mistakes, to look rigorously within ourselves. We give thanks for this human experience as spiritual beings, looking at life from a higher ground, a place of loving eyes, Christ vision, Christ consciousness. We ask that every day we remember to ask for guidance and direction. Tell me where to go, tell me what to do, tell me what to say and to whom, and give us ears to hear. With great humble thanksgiving, we come together today. We take a nice deep breath again. And we exhale into this moment. It's just so wonderful to be together. I'm so grateful for you, Goddi, Lisa.
Great to be here.
Before I turn it over to you, I just wanted to make a few announcements. This is our first meeting in October. And so there's a few things about October that I wanted to mention. Number one, as you see, I'm wearing my Hope and Care cap. It's for breast cancer awareness, breast health. My mother was a 30-year survivor of breast cancer. And so every October, I honor her memory by wearing a pink bracelet and a pink cap. So you'll be seeing me wearing this cap all through the month. And I just encourage everyone to do what you got to do. Women, do your examinations, get your mammograms, whatever it is that you feel is best for yourself. And we all hold each other in the highest regard for the best health. You know, it's modern times. We want cancer to be eradicated from all humans. And this is just happens to be the month where we're focusing specifically on the continued concern that we have for breast cancer. So wishing everyone good breast health and good overall health. Also today, that regardless of when you see it, I want you to know that we are recording on October 4th, which in the Catholic and Christian tradition, it's honoring of St. Francis. And there's many churches throughout the country that are having pet blessing events. So you might, if you want, have a little critter at your house that you'd like to get blessed. I'm sure there's somewhere in your area where you can get your pet blessed. St. John the Divine, which is the beautiful, amazing Gothic cathedral where I was ordained, has a huge, magnificent celebration every year. In fact, if you're on my daily WhatsApp, I sent a little video of what they had done yesterday, and they actually bring in pets from sanctuaries as well as from film studios. So in addition to people bringing their dogs and cats, they have goats and llamas and horses, and it's just wonderful to see all humanity come together to care for one another. The two-legged, the four-legged, the winged, all of it, coming together in Thanksgiving for being in each other's space. And I am very grateful for all the critters that have been in my life. And then the third thing I want to say is that also on October 4th of this year, as we move into the evening, we have the holy days from the Jewish tradition of Yom Kippur, which is a time of contemplation and atonement. And it's interesting because A Course in Miracles uses the word differently. It doesn't mean to ask for forgiveness, and yet everything about reaching atonement in A Course in Miracles, which is that non-duality, the sense of being at one, it really is about doing the forgiveness work. So in a way, even we're rising higher of an understanding of what forgiveness and atonement truly is on a much deeper level. So I'd like to share this with you. It's been going around the internet. The author is unknown, but it is in honor of Yom Kippur. To forgive is not to forget. To forgive is to remember. Remember that nobody's perfect. All of us stumble. When we want so much to stay upright, each of us say things we wish we hadn't said. We sometimes forget that love is more important than being right. To forgive is to remember. Remember that there is so much more than our mistakes, that we are often kind, and to remember that accepting another's flaws can help us to accept our own. To forgive is to remember that the odds are pretty good that we might soon need to be forgiven, that life sometimes gives us more than we can handle gracefully. To forgive is to remember that we have room in our hearts to begin again and again and again.
Beautiful.
Amen to that.
Amen to that.
And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Goddi Lisa.
Thank you so much for that. That was just beautiful. And to me, and I'm sure to our listeners and yourself as well, I heard A Course in Miracles. I heard Jesus speaking in that. I did. It's just, we can't stress forgiveness from that perspective enough, because it's all about forgiveness. And that makes it interesting, because what we talked about on Thursday was not forgiveness per se at all, but everything always comes back to that. But it was chapter 18 from the text, and it was section 5, the happy dream. And it was a very interesting class in that you mentioned these 3 scientists who said that, we are mind, body, and spirit. These scientists acknowledge mind, body, and spirit, and we can't cut out any one of them. And I know for me, it's very easy to cut out one of those sections. These scientists were kind enough to, while it was a little heady for me, I would have to have their book or their video or whatever in front of me to watch a couple of times so I could really absorb it. But what it was physiologically, don't try to separate body, mind, and spirit, because body, mind, and spirit are one, are us. Yeah, and that's what we talk about it all the time. And it's just so easy to focus. So what I was hearing, which I've heard spiritually many times, but what I heard from these scientists was, it's not going to work if you try to separate mind, body, and spirit. Something's going to happen. And I thought that was really neat. And because it was something that I knew, but it was just great the way you presented it, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that you didn't read from a science book or something about the medulla oblongata or whatever, and the cerebral cortex to confuse me. So, but you got the point across, and it was really cool, and I love that. And so it was just, it's not that if I didn't hear it from science that I wouldn't believe it, because that's not true. I know science is finally catching up, in my humble opinion, with what we as mystics and on our spiritual path have known. But it is really neat to have another layer of wow and experience and knowledge of all this, because certainly I can learn a lot more about how I feel by listening to science and not just to my own thoughts or even to just meditating. It's great to hear this stuff. So I thought that was really wonderful. And to bring in the chapter, I'd just like to read the importance of, they said it and the chapter said it, the importance of relationships and how we respond to each other and how we can't do things alone. There's always two people in order to progress or move ahead, to be mind, body, and spirit. We need to be mind, body, and spirit with others. And we are either teachers or students or whatever, but there's growth in mind and body and spirit. Anytime someone comes into our life to annoy us, to raise us up, to make us laugh, to make us cry, it's all for our growth, our deeper connection with the divine. And so I just wanted to read this. It says, when you feel the holiness of your relationship is threatened by anything, stop instantly and offer the Holy Spirit your willingness, in spite of fear, to let him exchange this instant for the Holy One that you would rather have. And then whoever is saner at the time the threat is perceived should remember how deep in his indebtedness to the other and how much gratitude is due him, and be glad that he can pay his debt by bringing happiness to both. Let him remember this. And that sounds like I jumped from one to the other, which I did, but I did it for a reason, and it's because if I skip a mind, a body, or a spirit when I am relating to someone or with someone, either as a teacher, student, whatever, if I'm not in line with mind, body, and spirit, mine as well as this person who is either attacking me, making me laugh, whatever, the relationship can go askew and fear will immediately pop up. And that's from past experiences, the way we were raised, the way that society is or isn't or whatever. And so to be mindful of this three-legged stool, mind, body, and spirit, not just in me, but in others with whom I have relationship. And it's so important that I reiterate again, it can be an attack. Someone can be attacking me. I must be in line with my mind, my body, my spirit, and honor their mind, their body, and spirit. Not that I'm going to stand there and take a punch in the face or be insulted or whatever, but it needs to come from all that I am and all that I have within me. And I just think about how easy it is for me, perhaps particularly at this time when the elections are coming up and all that, to hear all kinds of stuff and make all kinds of quick judgments, just quick judgments. But if I can take a deep breath and look, first of all, at myself and say, why are you going so crazy? Calm down, breathe. And then I can hear or listen to the same thing over again and hear something different or see someone differently. Not that I accept things that that go against my nature, but that I can see this person as someone who is, as the Course says, you're either seeking love or you're expressing love. So if someone to me is not expressing love to me, they are seeking love from me. How I give it, if I've got this mind, this body, and this spirit that I can use to respond, not react, respond to whatever is going on around me. And I think, and I think we all know that so much of what we are is what we were. what we saw, what we thought, what other people saw or thought of us, what was going on at the time as we grew up and became adults and so forth. So it's so easy to just default to anything that you don't, that I really don't have to think that much about. And sadly, that can be not so kind. So again, to go back to these scientists and our teachings that we have, it's just, we are so blessed to have this three-legged stool, this mind, body, and spirit, but to try, the key is to try to keep them all aligned. I try very deeply to keep my mind open to spirit so that I can hear what spirit's telling me. But if I'm filling it up with some kind of stuff that I may have with what am I supposed to wear today, or what is so-and-so going to be doing today, or whatever, my mind, my body, and my spirit are not all in alignment. So I'm not in alignment, and I'm not really serving what the purpose that the Holy Spirit is trying to serve through me. So you had said, and I think you might have said it was Gabor Mate, or maybe you didn't. But the quote was, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And I just love that. Whether it sounds like Gabor Mate to me, but whoever it was, it just expresses why we can overreact or even actually underreact or respond to situations because of all this stuff that we've, brought into us just because it was there, because our mother was our mother, our father was our father, or we didn't have a mother or a father, and then it, went on from there. So I just found Thursday to be really wonderful, and I was totally, and I found this with conversations, RevLo, that since we started this, it's really been wonderful for me because on many levels, but one is that after each class, I always had stuff going through my head, and I could, talk your ear off if we were able to interact online. So it's probably a good thing that you're on Facebook, because I was just, all this stuff comes to my head, and it doesn't even have to be, a smooth thing. It can be a question up here, a question down here, whatever. But this allows me to kind of focus in on this something or some things that really stood out that we can talk about further. And that has empowered me to look deeper and to unpack throughout the week. Yeah. And that I have noticed the past, I would say 3 weeks, it's just been in my face, the synchronicities and just the more easily helping me to see things differently and finding peace in this that doesn't look so peaceful. So I want to thank you for bringing Miracles with a Twist to the public and to inviting me in many years ago. And now this, I am so grateful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. And thank you for the commentary, because I don't actually know who said if it's hysterical, it's historical. It's something that I've heard time and time again. And it does sound very Gabor Mate-ish, but it is something that is said often to help people understand that if you're overreacting to something, it's probably not about what is actually happening in the moment. But since you brought up Gabor Mate, it did give me a memory of something I saw with him and Adishante, who is a young Vedantic teacher, and they were on a panel discussing, Gabor Mate talks about trauma, and Adishante talks about, from the spiritual perspective. And so Gabor Mate said to him, well, I'm not going to be able to keep up with you when it comes to the spiritual stuff, because you've got that. And Adishante said to him, oh no, what you're doing is very spiritual. What you're doing is absolutely work of the spirit. And it's so true, because we cannot separate the body, mind, spirit healing process. And so it was a pleasant surprise to me when I was listening to these two men. Their names are Thomas Hubel and Terry Real. And they were speaking on behalf of something called the Trauma Summit. It's something that they do every year. And they talk about the mind and what happens when the mind is triggered. You know, they were talking about having fights with their wives, like in spite of what they know and how much they know and how far they've come, that they still get triggered, because it's not about what you know intellectually. It might work with someone that you're not triggered by. You can have a conversation, maybe somebody insults you and you're like, yeah, whatever, you know, it doesn't bother you. You know, I'm going to get back to that because it just reminded me of something else. I was listening to another woman, teacher whose name escapes me right now, but she was talking about how we have to depersonalize things that are said to us. And so she called a woman from the audience to stand up. And the woman stood up, and the woman was beautiful, young, very well-dressed, very slim. And the speaker said, "You are fat and ugly, and you're disheveled, and how dare you come to my presentation looking like that?" And everybody started laughing. And she said, "Why are you laughing?" And they were like, "Well, because she's not fat, she's not ugly, and she's not disheveled, you know?" And so she said, "So why would you believe anything anybody says to you? Like, what I said was so ridiculous. Like, why would you be insulted by anything anybody said to you, unless you believed it of yourself? If she believed herself to be ugly and disheveled and fat, then maybe what I said to her would have hurt her." And so that's why, getting back to the two guys talking about getting triggered by their wives, you know, there's a whole world of people who can say things to us and we not be disturbed by it. But in an intimate interaction, we could get suddenly so upset, and we go from being Mother Teresa to the Wicked Witch. And it's like, what just happened? And it's because what they were saying is that there is the process of the brain going from the logical mind, the logical mature mind, which is the frontal cortex, to giving it all up to the amygdala, which is the ancient brain. It's what stored those childhood memories, those childhood pains, and now you're responding like a child. And so they were saying that they have these agreements with their wives saying, look, until the day comes, if ever it comes, and people even ask them, does the day ever come that you're completely healed? They said, maybe not. What can happen is enough self-awareness so that you can handle it differently than you may have in the past, responding as opposed to reacting, as you said earlier. And so they said they have this agreement, only one goes crazy at a time. You know, if this is your turn to go crazy, I'm going to do my best to contain it and try not to join you with that. And that's what reminded me of the quote in chapter 18. I was like, oh my goodness, this is course material. They are speaking of the body, mind, spirit. And it reminded me of the quote that you read, that whoever is saner, you know, shows their indebtedness to their loved one by providing that space for them, by seeing them that they're just a child asking for love, you know, to be tolerant and compassionate of that raging child that's showing themselves through the adult body. And so they spoke about that, but they themselves started talking about meditation and prayer and how that has to be integrated into their process of learning and becoming more compassionate, because the compassionate piece comes from spiritual practices. We can say all we want about, you know, taking turns going crazy, but if you don't have compassion, what do you have? You have resentment, and you have the story that you're going to hold on to, so you can come back at the other person later, you know. And actually, another Gabor Mate story comes to mind. He says he's in his 70s now, and he told a story just like last year. He was saying, I'm like 72 years old, and his wife didn't show up at the airport to pick him up from one of his many travels out there, you know, speaking so wise and helping people understand how to handle their upsets and what's going on in their brains and all this. And his wife wasn't there to pick him up. So he called her and she said, oh, I got the time wrong. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. I'll hop a cab. So he said by the time he got home, he was feeling rejected and upset, and maybe she didn't want to pick me up, and maybe she's not happy. And here, they're like 30 years married, and he's got, 40 years in this business. And he said he came in home and he just like ignored her, and she was like, "Are you upset with me?" No, I'm not. And he said, "And here I already know these things, And so he started doing some spiritual dives as well. He does it through ayahuasca, and now he's doing some psilocybin, but he does a journeying with people. It's not just random, and he does microdosing with people to help them get to a deeper place within. But he's very compassionate, very loving, and so he does integrate spirituality now into all that he does as well. In addition to that, I listened to another man by the name of Darson Church, and he was speaking about the importance of using energy techniques to calm ourselves down and to get ourselves out of our critical mind. And so one of the main techniques he talk about is EFT, which is tapping. You give yourself these affirmations while you're tapping these different parts of your face and your collarbone and in your head. And he talked about how they're all meridians that are tied into through the Chinese concept of acupressure, tied into different organs, and different organs are tied into different emotions. So he was explaining it and talking about it and showing how to go through it. And then again, he said, but you also need to have a meditation practice, a prayer practice. And I was like, thank you. I mean, everyone is now saying, add this in. And he also made a good point. He said, don't do just one thing. And he talked about a friend of his who was not into prayer or meditation, but he married a woman who was into prayer or meditation. So every morning he tiptoes out the door and, says bye to her, but leaves her alone because she was going to go into meditation. And then one day he knocked something over and the dog was barking and it was all this noise, and she opened the door and started yelling at him. And he was like, well, I thought go back to that peaceful place. And so what Mr. Church was saying was that it's not enough if you can still be triggered. If your nervous system, if your emotions can still be triggered, out of a place of prayer and meditation to come out yelling at somebody, well then you can then realize that there has to be an integration. There has to be an integration of mind, body, and spirit. So I'm glad that, we've been talking about this for years, though, from A Course in Miracles perspective. We always talk about integrating all aspects of ourselves, and we talk about being 5 parts, the social, the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. All of those parts are a part of our lives. We can't separate ourselves one from the other. And so we take a heightened awareness of the importance of taking care of ourselves on all those levels. But how wonderful that the scientific, the world of science has merged with the world of spirit, and we're all moving together in that light and love toward the healing that we need, so that we can maintain a place of balance and higher consciousness and Christ consciousness and forgiveness and compassion and kindness, and on a more consistent level. Even when we find ourselves going back to those old triggers in the amygdala, to remember, I know a little bit more than I did yesterday.
Yes.
I want to do a little bit better than I would have done. So thank you for bringing it up and for digging a little bit deeper. I really appreciate it. And I would love for you to have either some final words or a final prayer.
Okie doke. I have a quote from our beloved Course in Miracles here, and it's on grace. And I was reading this publication this morning, and it just jumped out at me. I had something picked for earlier, but this just jumped out at me, because grace sometimes to me seems to maybe be forgotten or taken for granted or whatever. And it's just such a beautiful blessing. And grace is just pure peace, love, everything that can be rained down upon us is always being rained down upon us. And so I thought I'd give it its propers. So Grace is acceptance of the love of God within a world of seeming hate and fear. By grace alone, the hate and fear are gone, for grace presents a state so opposite to everything the world contains that those whose minds are lighted by the gift of grace cannot believe the world of fear is real. And this is from the workbook at 169. And I thought that was just perfect.
It's beautiful. It's like hearing it for the first time.
Yep.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you.
See you next Tuesday.
Okay, I'll be here.